Hey y'all, I'm Karen Mayer Cunningham, the special education boss. If you've ever felt confused, overwhelmed, or just plain frustrated at the 504 IEP table, you are in the right place. Every week, I'm breaking down the rules, the rights, and the realities of special education so you can walk into meetings informed, empowered, and ready to make real change. And whether you're a parent, a teacher, an advocate, a school-based member, or somebody who's just trying to do right by a student, this podcast gives you straight talk, real answers, and tools that you can use immediately. I'm not here to play politics. I'm not here to play sides. I'm here to train people who sit at the table and teach you how to follow the law, ask the right questions, and protect the rights of students. So go ahead and hit subscribe, share this with a friend, and you know what? Meet me back here every single week. We're not just talking about change. We're making it. Because when you know better, you do better. And when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody.
Hey guys, welcome in. It's the world's hottest day on the planet. I feel like the weatherman needs to put out an alert that we are all need to stay inside and hydrated forever. It is too hot to be outside. Some of us it's too hot to be inside. Hey you guys, thank you. I like to, I'm trying to wear different colors. Somebody said the other day that I have a lot of pink. I don't know. Do I have a lot of pink? Is everything that I own pink? I don't know. I feel like pink is a good color, right? It works for, who does it work for? It works for Lisa Vanderpump, so I feel like it should work for me. Tell us your questions. Do you need to have a meeting to add accommodations on an IEP? You need to have a meeting to do anything with an IEP. I got a message today that a family was going to have a pre-meeting to talk about how good an OHI form is. Oh, no. There will be no pre-meetings. There will be the meeting, and then there will be the meeting. But we don't have a pre-meeting. You know why the school calls you in for a pre-meeting? It's not because they need something else to do. Why did they do a pre-meeting? They did a pre-meeting. I have a client that's adding an OHI to her son's eligibility, and they wanted to talk about the OHI form before I came to the IEP meeting. There's no need for that. And you know why there's no need for that? Everything that gets decided anyway happens in an IEP meeting. So we don't need to have the meeting before the meeting about the meeting under the meeting. Yeah. So there's that.
Do you need to have a meeting to add accommodations to an IEP?
You need to have a meeting to make adjustments to the IEP. Now, there are different types of meetings. There are two kinds of meetings that you must fully convene the IEP committee together, and then there are IEPs that you can do by paper amendment. So for two areas, you have to convene the IEP team. You couldn't do it by paper amendment. Those are one, eligibilities. So if you want to consider adding an eligibility or removing an eligibility, you have to convene an IEP meeting, all of the little friends, right? Number two is for minutes. If we're going to adjust minutes, consider adjusting minutes, any of that, you have to convene an IEP meeting. But anything in the middle, if you could agree, then you could do a paper amendment, a paper IEP. So if you agreed that we need to add extra time, we need to add chunking assignments, then you could certainly do that. Maybe adjusting an IEP goal, that sort of thing. You could do it by paper amendment, meaning the parent agrees to waive the convening of all members. The school district does the IEP amendment. They send you a copy of it. You sign off of it, and it becomes part of your student's cumulative folder.
Perfect. Since dyslexia is back under the SPED umbrella, do dyslexia teachers need to be certified in SPED now?
So I don't know that dyslexia is back under an umbrella. So it's never changed under IDEA. I think that there's been some loosey-goosiness at the state level. I think states are getting a lot of heat from parents and reading groups and parents of kiddos with dyslexia, as they should. So dyslexia is the one eligibility that can be served under general education or special education. And so based on the acuity of your child's dyslexia, I would say probably if your child has other SLDs, there are 9 in total, that there's a probability that your child's dyslexia needs to be delivered by a certified special education teacher. But no, all dyslexia teachers do not need to become special ed certified.
In-class support was added to my son's 504, and then the district removed it with no explanation. What do I do?
So 504 doesn't have in-class support. So the only thing that has in-class support is an IEP, an individualized education program. So if the question is switched around and saying that they removed it without your permission, on an IEP, everything has to be with a consensus model. You have to be there to make the decisions. Unfortunately, because I'm a big fan of 504, a 504, you don't even have to be invited to the meeting. They can invite your 7-year-old and not invite you. So all decisions should be made collaboratively with the parent. Obviously, they're the expert on the child with a disability.
All right. And how can I retain a child in 8th grade who has an IEP?
It's going to be pretty much near impossible. I think the most unusual time I had a child retained, and I think he was in junior high, he had missed 89 days of school because of onset seizures. So retention, you're really going to have to argue that the student missed so much instruction, there wouldn't be a way to adequately measure acquisition of the information. So I certainly understand that a lot of times you want to retain a child because you believe that repeating that content area would help him have gains. And I don't know that it would or wouldn't, but retention is an administrative decision. It is not a special education decision.
All right. And is it illegal for a special education teacher to not pull the kid for all of their minutes?
It is the denial of a free, appropriate public education to not deliver the IEP in the conformity that it was agreed to. So, yeah.
All right. And this one says, my son has an IEP for autism and has eating and food problems. Can that be added to the IEP?
Sure. So if your child has eating concerns at school, I would ask for a dysphagia evaluation. So anything that occurs in the instructional day, eating, walking, speaking, social, academics, functional, anything that occurs during the day, we have testing for to make sure that your student is in the normed and average range. If they are not, we can provide interventions around that.
And then Cassandra would like to know if IEPs can help pay for tutoring.
It's not been my experience that an IEP would help pay for tutoring. Certainly, if your student is due compensatory time, that's something we can talk about with the IEP committee.
I was told that my daughter's autism is not a quiet daughter and just adding it on the medical information.
Coming to the table with a medical eligibility does that make them eligible for special education and related services. To be eligible for special education and related services, you have to have the school do an educational evaluation to see if that's an eligibility. So that's certainly helpful to get that testing started, but you have to have the school's testing as well.
Okay, what is it likely that following a due process would help pay for ABA therapy to my son's services?
Nationally, you should know that a due process is going to cost you about $30,000. About 37% of decisions are won for parents. So if you have $30,000 and if you are willing to be in the whatever is 37 minus 100, the 63rd percentile that do not win, it's a pretty high risk. I certainly would do everything that I could to remedy that situation ahead of time. So certainly when you file due process, there are steps before you go to hearing. The hearing officer certainly wants both parties to do whatever they can to settle. You could do that through a dispute resolution process or through mediation as well.
Can a parent assist with changing feminine hygiene products? What do we need in an IEP for that time of the month assistant?
So any trained school professional can assist a student with a disability with their functional needs. It's not set out by gender. I certainly think that schools do the best that they can to match that, but it's not a federal or state requirement.
Can a school say they don't do testing for ADHD?
Silly school. So a school doesn't do testing for ADHD. What schools do test for is if there's a neurological condition that would be a federal eligibility under IDA, and those three eligibilities would be autism, emotional disturbance, or OHI for ADHD, any of the 3 types.
Can the school in New York City put together an FBA based on notes the school says they have?
So an FBA is based on school-based members' observations and data collection of a student at school. Depending on which school district you are in, if they've already had an initial FBA, determines the persons that populate that. But certainly it's from the school-based members.
Is there a reason that the school would want to qualify for OHI instead of for autism diagnosis?
So the reason is that we want to pick the correct eligibility. It's the most important thing that we get right, because the eligibility opens the door for services. The services, the interventions, the supplementary aids and supports that you would have for a child with OHI, ADHD is different than the services, support, supplementary aids and interventions that we would have with a child with autism. They have different eligibilities because they have different needs that need to be addressed with specially designed instruction.
I think this one is a good question.
Mm-hmm.
This one, an art teacher. She said, all too often there are never any accommodations for my class. How do I make that happen?
Fantastic. Well, God bless the art teacher. So on the accommodations page, there is obviously reading, math, science, and social studies, sometimes language arts. You need to make sure that whoever is populating the IEP opens up that last column that says ELE, electives, or BLK for block, so that all the electives are populated as well. It's not like a student with a disability all of a sudden shows up in another class and has no need of any accommodations. So make sure that those kiddos' accommodations follow them throughout the day where it's appropriate.
If a child has autism, can you get behavioral interventions on an IEP instead of them suspending them?
If a child in school has behavioral needs and is in special education, or if they're on a 504, you can have a behavior intervention plan. So you don't have to have a specific disability. There are kiddos that have a disability in math calculation, and based on the severity of their math calculation disability, they have behaviors that present during academic presentation. So you need to make sure that all of their needs, emotional, communication, language, functional, academics, are on every student's IEP. You don't have to have an eligibility to have services and supports. That's very clear in Andrew F., that if there's a need that is determined in the present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, that we serve that need in the totality of the student's individualized education program.
Perfect. And this one says, my son is eligible for transportation for his AP, and the district does not want to create a route. What do I do?
Oh, that's fine. The district doesn't have to create a route. They can send a private car to our house, a limousine, an Uber, or, I don't know, a pterodactyl to pick him up. But figure it out, Buttercup. Or just say, if you don't, I'll call Karen. And is that really what you want? It's not. But we should have shirts to say, I'll call Karen. Is that what you want?
Okay. Admin asked me to pull my son out of school 2 days a week for ABA therapy. The staff needs help.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, so the admin asked her to pull her child out of school twice a week, 2 days a week for ABA therapy if the staff and school needs help.
So it sounds like you need to have a meeting and look at out-of-district placement at the district's expense, because the district doesn't have the staff or qualifications to serve your child's educational needs.
My son has speech therapists at school, but only receives once a week when his IEP states 3 times a week. What do I do?
So I would say, hi, Buttercup. I like to go with Buttercup. It appears that during the IEP year, my student missed however many hours of speech and language therapy services. We need to meet to talk about a compensatory time to mitigate the impact of that loss.
All right. And Shelby is asking that the school refused to evaluate for an IEP and has denied our request for an IEE on the basis of grade only. Her student had is that part of hearing ADHD or AD. What does she do?
Well, the first thing that I would do is I would consider filing a state complaint, which we're going to talk about in the academy. The prior written notice, which is a requirement from the LEA, the local education agency, to the parent when they choose to do something or choose not to do something, requires 7 components of it. Doesn't sound like those 7 components were legally met, and that's a violation of the state. If your child is deaf and hard of hearing and has those other eligibilities, medical or not, it's a high probability that we have flown past triggering child find. So I would file a state complaint. The great thing about a state complaint is it's 60 days in and out. So I would file it tomorrow.
My son is eligible for transportation per his IEP, and the district does not want to create a route in Illinois. Anything she can do?
So we just did that question earlier. So it's against the law to deny him any part of his IEP. So transportation is a related service under IDEA. So it'd be the same thing as if they didn't give your child speech, they didn't give him Braille, if they didn't give him PT. So I would just call the superintendent and just say, what time will you be at the end of my driveway to pick up my cherub? Yep. I would really, really do that.
Jamie, that gave my child qualified for SE for math only. Can we get accommodations for other subjects as well?
Absolutely. Unless your child qualifies for speech, which is kind of locks it into that's called the speech only IEP. Any other eligibility, Andrew F., ENDREW, F., March 22nd, 2017, the U.S. Supreme Court made a very landmark decision, which you should all read. And part of that decision is that any need that is identified in the present levels, whether it's the name of the eligibility or not, we serve that child. So this shenanigan that I can't help a kid because he doesn't have the same eligibility, you could have a math calculation eligibility and struggle in reading. You could have a reading disability and struggle in math. Ding, 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 ding. So this whole, we can't do that because that's not the name of the eligibility is completely refuted by that U.S. Supreme Court decision.
And what staff should be included in an IEPT?
So the 5 consensus members under IDEA, of course, primary number 1 is listed by the federal government as the most important person, the parent. They're considered the expert under case law. General education teacher, because all of our students are general education students first. Special education teacher, someone that can do evaluation, interpret results, and answer questions about evaluations. And of course, an LEA representative, which is almost always a principal, an assistant principal, a vice principal, or in some conditions, there's a certification that counselors can take to be the LEA rep.
Can a school site deny testing a child for SLDs if they did not receive RTI prior to the referral?
No. January 2011, OSEP, the Office of Special Education Programs, put out a letter to all of our little friends in the nation and said, hey, just remember, MTSS, RTI, SST, none of those things can be used to stop testing. So, silly rabbit, tricks are for kids. And they do it all the time. It's ridiculous. What you do is, when you are RTIing a kid that much, you're making general ed teachers be special ed teachers. Like, general ed teachers need one more thing to do.
Can some accommodations deny your child from a diploma?
Not accommodations, no. And nothing denies your child a diploma. I just want to clarify that. Depending on your student's acquisition of course credits in that state, determine whether or not at certain points you receive a certification of participation. There are different unique circumstances. I have a child that I serve that is non-responsive. He won't be earning his credits, so he won't be receiving a diploma. But most states have kind of really obliterated all of that, and all kids gather and acquire all the same credits to graduate. Kiddos that are not in special education are usually required to get 4 more credits than special ed kids, but your state can give you the specifics around that.
What is the difference between an ED primary versus ASD primary for an IEP? The school is not acknowledging ASD.
So in special education, we call AU under an educational eligibility. So emotional disturbance, autism, and ADHD, OHI have like characteristics. And depending on the characteristics that present at school is how a school is going to categorize that impact at school. In some states, like in Texas, the great state of Texas where we live, if your ED is primary and autism is secondary, then the autism goes away. And so there are some states that let them both present and some states that do not. And it depends upon how your state regulations are set up.
And following up to the transportation question earlier, not requesting transportation to and from her house, but requesting it one way in the afternoon to a therapy facility.
So there's no requirement for them to send a child to a therapy facility. If your child if your kids go to a daycare after school, that's very normal, but that wouldn't be part of a natural route because other kids go to those same daycares.
What do you do if your child didn't receive services for 18 weeks?
Same thing, I would say. So it's come to my attention that the totality of my son's IEP, which we agreed on the conformity of, was not delivered. We need to meet to talk about a compensatory time to look at the impact of the loss of his special education.
And can the school pull their lawyer in on an IEP if you ask questions on curriculum?
I ask for their lawyer to come to the IEP because sometimes people don't have no sense. And sometimes their lawyer doesn't have any sense. So I assume that the school district's attorney has sense. That's not always my experience. Let's go Wisconsin. But I hope that the school-based attorney has the school district's best, outcomes at heart. There should be somebody in the school district that has some sense. So if I'm in a meeting and it's not a place where we can have a business meeting, I just simply pull out my appointment book and I go, you know what? It looks like, Tabitha, we are not going to be able to have a meeting today. So let's look at another time to reconvene when we can have a business meeting. If you're not having a business meeting, get out. And I would reach out to the district and say it's very uncomfortable with the staff members that you have sent to the meeting. Please send different staff members next time so we can go through the components of the business meeting.
Okay, and this one is saying that my son has received, I believe they mean RTI, for 5 years, and they will not give him an IEP. He's only under 504, under OHI. What can be done?
I would immediately file a state complaint. You have exceeded child fine. There are things that trigger child fine. We're way past child fine. Child fine, listen to me. It simply says we test kids with suspected disabilities. If you're on a 504, you should have already been tested for child fine because you don't have a suspected disability. You have a determined disability. So everybody on a 504, lean in. Call your school, the head of testing today, and say, I want my child tested for an IEP, period.
Yeah. If a student is an ESY, can they be excluded from summer school field trips?
So I don't know what summer school field trips are. So ESY is for students who are in special education that either had documented regression on IEP goals with a profound amount of time to recoup them or are there for concern for loss of critical skills. I've never heard of summer school field trips. Summer school is very different than ESY. But that sounds like fun, summer school field trips.
Okay, that education teacher doesn't know sign language.
I'm sorry, what?
To learn what.
So I'm sorry, I thought you said the deaf education teacher didn't know sign language, but I know you were kidding.
No.
Oh.
No. I wish I was, but I'm not. So, deaf education teacher does not know sign language. She wants to learn while supporting my pre-K child.
Okay. And we certainly appreciate that. We want her to learn too. but she won't be supporting my child because we can't, this isn't not a learn as you go program for my child.
Okay, can you elaborate on regression and recoup?
Sure. ESY, it's a two-pronged consideration, right? So ESY is extended school year services for children that have an IEP. First prong is documented regression on IEP goals with a profound amount of time to recoup them. So let's say that kids come back after Thanksgiving break and there are just skills that they had that they just, I call them the Etch-a-Sketch, they're gone. And so I would consider a profound amount of time to recoup them is several weeks. Like, so usually when we come back from breaks, it's like, okay, you guys, let's get back to work. Come on, you know how to line up, put yourself in your cubby. And these kids really struggle with that long-term retrieval of those skills that they've had. So that's one thing. Or you've written goals that were probably you should have written that were not based on based on appropriateness, rate of progress, or expectations. So the kid didn't meet the goals, and with a profound amount of time to recoup them. So that is regression. And then recoupment is how quickly, after I've reminded you of a skill that you've acquired, can you bring that back up and use that?
Okay. Taking something out of an IEP after discussing it and not telling parents.
So if you take money out of somebody's wallet and don't tell them, what's that called? A problem. Right. Yeah, we don't do that. And we don't do that. So if I get an IEP back and I've realized that something is missing, which is why it's so important that you either bring a friend, bring a neighbor, bring the friend's neighbor, bring an advocate, record. I would just say, hey, Tabitha, going over the IEP final document, and I see some profound clerical errors. Let me know when you get these corrected. But we don't just let it go. Do I let anything go? Well, the first husband. Let him go. Mm-hmm.
Let it go. Especially present.
Yes.
For sure. Okay. And I asked for an IEP and the school filed for due process and I was denied. Can I request another one?
Well, if the school filed for due process, you're going to due process, love. So you can either revoke your request for an IE at the district expense, or you can let the district stand in front of a hearing officer and tell them why their IEE met all the federal requirements. So I don't have that very often. I think it's ridiculous. But if you believe that the school did not meet all their components of an evaluation, then go to due process. You have nothing to lose. Make sure it's public so all 5 million of us can support you. And if there's a reason you're asking for an IEE, then you have a right to, it's called your case in chief, present your case in chief. So I live in Texas. I'm allowed to represent families in due process, even though I'm not a litigator, and I do that. But parents have a voice. Don't be run over by the shenanigans from school districts. We have all been vaccinated for shenanigans.
Can parents request compensatory time if a student refused to leave class for LS&P services?
So if a student denies his services, denies his accommodations, then there's nothing we can do to change that. If I want Nicholas to wear his glasses that have been prescribed to him, and we all agree that he can't see the board and he refuses to keep them on, then I, as a school-based member, need to document that. There's nothing that you can do to make a child receive their services. We certainly want to document it, see if we can make adjustments to make it more appeasing and, compelling for the student to have a buy-in, but we can't make them do that.
As a gen ed teacher, nice. I've had to attend an IEP meeting. I never get any documentation about my son's time in gen ed.
So we can't have an IEP meeting without a gen ed teacher, which is why I don't go to IEP meetings in Houston Independent School District in Houston, Texas, because they rarely bring the entire IEP committee. 5 stakeholders have to be present. Otherwise, say it with me, let's look at another time when all the stakeholders can be present. So the meeting is over. We're not having the meeting because all the stakeholders aren't there.
We had a long-term sub for most of last year, but the teacher's name is showing up on progress reports. She's not there. Is that legal?
The person that's populating the progress reports should be the person that acquired the information. So I've had case managers populate progress reports who've never seen the kid, couldn't pick the kid out of a lineup, doesn't know the kid. In fact, I had a kiddo one time, we were talking about this kiddo, Hunter. And as most of us would say, the case manager said, and he's doing great. And the mom said, that's our daughter. Oh, so if you're going to fill out the progress report, I assume that's because you know about the kid's progress.
All right. How do I get an advocate for my grandson's IEP?
You would just email us at advocate@specialeducationacademy.com. Our advocates are from coast to coast.
I'm a Texas licensed attorney interested in becoming an advocate. Is there an opportunity to monetize?
Come on down. You're the next contestant. Yes. Yes, just email advocate@specialeducationacademy.com. We have all sorts of people that we have taken from other professions, but you're ready to go. And the great thing about being an advocate is you're not beholden to some school district that is not nice. You don't have to play the games of anything other than serving a child with a disability. It's fantastic.
Someone asked, I think that explain what an IEE is.
Sure, an IE is an independent education evaluation requested from the parent at the expense of the district because you disagree with the evaluation the district did in part or totality. Yes, teachers can become advocates.
Can you be denied pragmatic speech for a 5-year-old due to low receptive and expressive language?
So they're not the same thing. There's 9 areas that you can serve a child with speech impairment. Pragmatic is its own area. You can meet eligibility for pragmatic, expressive, receptive, fluency, voice. It's so silly what people say, isn't it? If it seems like a lie, lean in with me. It is.
All right. Can I request transportation reimbursement for taking to and from school? The student is eligible for transportation.
If that's an agreement that you and the school have made prior.
This one says, what about an intern teacher in a 504I?
I don't know what an intern teacher is. If it's a general education teacher, there are states that have exceptions for those. I could never be the special ed teacher.
Is the special ed teacher also the case manager?
Sometimes, but not always.
Because I live in another country, I was like, am I the case? Is it somebody else? Amanda said, I've done all the testing for my stepson to get an IEP. Still can't get an IEP, but he's autistic. What can I do?
You certainly want to sit down with the school and talk about the impact of his disability. So does it rise to the level of needing accommodations through a 504 or specially designed instruction? And if that is a no, after the school's testing, then I would ask for an IEE.
Okay, and this one says, can the principal retain my child with an IEP for an SLD if they are not reading at their grade level?
Retention is an administration decision. It's very, very, very rare. I would have to beg to have a kindergartner retained. Of course, kids with SLDs aren't reading at grade level, thus the SLD. I would reach out to the executive director for special education if that was the situation I was in.
All right, can a school take an IEP away from a kiddo since they say, quote unquote, she's doing okay and has passing grades?
So the way you got in special ed, same way you get out. You either graduate or you test out. So.
Perfect. And then we have somebody saying, how do I become an advocate?
So you would go to our trainings. We have training at Special Education Academy. We have 2-day intensives, which are on demand. You can get them right now. We have a 2-day live virtual that's coming up, and we're very excited about that. And then we have a mastermind for people that are ready to go all in, being full-time advocates.
If I'm a dual certified special ed teacher, can I attend that meeting as both?
No. You can just be one person at a meeting. And I know teachers are used to doing all things for all kiddos, but you have duties, responsibilities, and obligations around the role that you have.
Okay, and then Oliver Clive asked, what are exclusionary factors?
So there's a lot of exclusionary factors. It just depends on your child. That is probably something we need to do a training around, the great Alicia, exclusionary factors. There are a lot. So, for instance, if your child grew up in another country and spoke another language, then they're not necessarily going to meet educational eligibility for special education if they came to this country at 10 and spoke another language. But there are a lot of them.
Can assistant principal be the case manager?
No. No. The assistant principals are busy principaling. They're not special educators usually, which is sometimes obvious at the meeting.
When a district is asking parents to waive compensatory services due to the SLP being on maternity leave.
Yes, we waive your waiving.
The next part of the question is, what could the SPED teacher do to make sure the students get those services?
So the SPED teacher can't make up services for a related service provider. The SLP provides a related or an instructional service in the United States. We appreciate teachers and special education teachers, but you can't make up for a related or instructional service that was denied to the student on an IEP.
The last day of school, I finally got a copy of the IEP, but I asked to discuss it. They said, no, you have 30 days to sign it.
That sounds so, what's the word I'm looking for? Collaborative, said no one. Everybody has a boss. I would reach out to the executive director of that district. I would reach out to the assistant superintendent. I would not just take that shenanigan answer. This is not you get what you get and you can't throw a fit. So, no.
To qualify for an IEP, I'm being told that no strength means they cannot qualify for SPED. Is this a thing?
What the Hello Kitty are you? What human doesn't have strengths? Oh, if the human doesn't have strengths, then we have the wrong adults identifying those. That is when you pull out your special education academy pool noodle and whoop them in the face one time.
Gently, and you don't leave a mark. But that's not they're too low, so they don't qualify, you know?
Oh, I like that they're too disabled, or the child that doesn't speak, that doesn't need speech services. What?
Correct.
We've done all that we can. We've done all we can.
My non-speaking child that was in school since pre-K that did get an AAC until I asked for it in first grade. Guys, what are we doing?
We're pacing ourselves. We are pacing ourselves.
Yes. All right. This one said, can you expand on quote unquote test out?
Test out? So we got into special education.
I'm saying.
Yeah. I was thinking of the other word, opt out. So let me explain on test out. So to qualify for an IEP, the school has a duty, onus, responsibility, and obligation to test them in all areas of suspected disability. If the committee believes, if the whole committee, you, the neighbors, and the president of the United States believe that your son no longer needs an IEP, fantastico. Then the same process happens so that we don't make any missteps and we do the same testing. And of course, if we're all right, he would be in the normed range and wouldn't meet that eligibility criteria.
Can your SPED director make you fire your advocate?
Your SPED director can't make you get divorced. You can bring whoever you want to the meetings, just like the school can bring 27 people to the meeting. I won't mention what district that's in. No, they can't make you do anything. This is not a hostage situation. That's why you have procedural rights. That's why we are in a series right now of your procedural rights. Unfortunately, nobody at the school seems to know what they are. And more tragically, parents have no idea that they have countless procedural rights to protect them and their child with a disability.
All right. How often do your client families choose homeschooling rather than continue with a failing IEP?
Probably less than 1%.
All right. Adjudicated. What do you do if the data is not being taken for the progress monitor?
So I would say, just want to let you know, dear token cheesehead, that I will be picking up the raw data collection sheets at the end of every grading period. Do you want me to bring you a floppy disk, a rock that you can chisel, a VHS tape, a zip drive, or some copy paper? What's the best way to pick it up? And then they will know at the end of that grading period, you'll be picking up the raw data collection sheets. You might have the only child who's actually will be getting data collected, but that's how you make sure, and you partner with the school to make sure that's happening.
And this one's like, can I ask for a different case manager for my son?
No, just like they can't ask for you to have a different advocate. You can certainly reach out to the district and say you're concerned about the staff person's ability to do their job. How that will go over depends. I don't find that people in education lose their jobs very often. Not that I want anybody to lose their job, but I don't ever find that that's usually a good modality. I've certainly been in meetings where I've said, hey, Alicia, the diagnostician, keeps yelling at us. Could you bring a second diagnostician that will serve in her role at the meeting?
Very difficult when that person is the supervisor.
I'm the one that made them all so lovely.
Yeah. My son goes to a special education in California. Am I legally allowed to ask for the incident report?
It doesn't matter where they go to school. If a child has an incident report, it's a required documentation. The law says it's your procedural right, which we've gone over in the procedural rights series that we're in, that you have the right to review and examine your child's educational records and receive copies of them. So that would be part of your child's educational record. So yes, I'd be happy to be in receipt of a copy of that.
Okay. The child tested out of special education gets okay grade, but clearly needs more help and modification, and the 504 isn't enough. What do I do? Again, the child is diagnosed autistic. Just to catch you up.
Then you retest. Kids, and that's not unusual. And let's talk about that. That's not unusual. That's why autism is called autism spectrum disorder. It is a spectrum. That's why it's called fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. Those are spectrums. They present very differently, right? So there are kids that have been in special education. They go to a 504 that then need special education. That's not illegal. That's not unusual.
All right. If we are a school with all sped teachers, how do we supply gen ed teachers for CS?
What is a school with all sped teachers? I don't know what that means.
Yeah, me neither. Don't worry, ask that one. Could you provide any info on what compensatory education fund would cover for a child?
So it's not necessarily funds. So compensatory education is usually applied to give the student relief. And so let's talk about that for a second. So when I file a federal complaint, a state complaint, a due process, at the end of it, the federal government wants to know what my requested relief is. My requested relief is, number one, could we get the school district trained on their duties, obligation, responsibilities under ADA and 504 or state IDEA, ADA 504, whatever I'm filing on. So that's the first relief. The second relief is for the student, and that is compensatory time. And depending on what happened, how long it happened, and the impact, I will propose a compensatory package for a student. So without disclosing those, because some of those have been sealed, I have had compensatory packages that were 6 years long, and I've had compensatory packages that were 20 hours long. It depends on what the child needs. Again, we also don't want to penalize the student and make them come to school a bunch of hours after or before or during summer because the adults didn't do their job.
Okay, and then Oliver and Clyde, I had a follow-up question. How do you move forward when the district and the advocate have an adversarial relationship?
you know what? Hopefully the advocate is an adult and a professional and has had some skills training and realize it's just a business meeting. I am in knockdown dragouts with school districts and log off, and 5 minutes later have to log on to another IEP meeting for a different student, and it's the same people. And I start that meeting, good afternoon, how are you? We're business professionals. I mean, attorneys don't get into court and have fist fights. Professionals should be able to finish a meeting and start another meeting and be professional. If you can't be professional in a meeting, you are in the wrong field.
Do kids not in special education have educational records that the parent can request?
Absolutely. Every child in school has educational records.
All right. And then how can an IEP kid how can a kid with an IEP keep getting passed after failing every EOG since third grade with a 0 accountability and then sent to high school being told his grades will matter?
So, I mean, there are kids on an IEP who are they're not going to pass end of course, right? That's their disability. There are kids that aren't in special ed that do terrible on state testing. So if you're in special education, there's a reason that you're there, right? Standardized tests don't always capture a good view of who you are, but you certainly want to make sure that you are ready for any state testing. If you're in special education and you don't pass your end of course in high school, of course, that can be waived because you are in special education.
Aaron, let me just read Gabriella's statement for you. Are you ready for this? Are you sitting down? Correct. So Gabriella said, my son's teacher is refusing to change him, and he is 3 in special ed pre-K and has autism.
So it sounds like they need to get a new staff member. I would immediately call the superintendent on that. Well, I would give the principal 1 second to fix it. 1 second.
Yeah.
1 second.
I think I'd give them half a second. Okay, so back to the all special education certified teacher.
Yeah, what's that place?
So they said they have special education only schools where she's at, but they're typically out of district placement.
Yeah, so out of district placement, when you have out of district placement, the school they came from has to be at the IEP meeting. So you'll always have a general ed teacher there.
All right. My daughter will be transitioning from an IEP to a 504, which concerns me for college. Should she be concerned?
From an IEP to a 504 in college?
Yeah, so she has an IEP. They're going to transition from the IEP to the 504.
Well, there's no IEP in college. That doesn't exist. So IEPs solely exist for 3 to 22-year-olds in public school. They do not exist in college. So your 504 document turns into ADA accommodations once you're out of public school, right? So ADA says the Americans with Disabilities Act says you can have accommodations based on your disability from the time you get on the planet to the time you leave the planet. In education, in public school, it's called a 504, and then those accommodations turn into ADA accommodations or 504 accommodations in college. But no, your kiddo is going to be great in college. I just know it.
I think this one is a great question. So she's saying if SELPA has in-house counsel, an employee, and is present at her child's IEP, and she doesn't have a lawyer, what can she do? She feels bullied.
So that's unfortunate. The school district has the right at any point to bring in counsel to a meeting if they want to. So a lot of that time that is to guide the conversation gently, but they certainly have the right to bring an attorney just as a parent has the right to bring an attorney. Okay.
The school in our district was out at the end of May. Yesterday, I finally received his IEP progress reports. What the heck? And it hardly was filled out, and he is going to middle school. What can I do?
I would reach out to the special education director who works year-round.
So this one is the follow-up for the lawyer. She's asking if the lawyer can speak as an expert on her child.
So I am not an attorney, so I'm not going to speak on what attorneys can speak on, but it's not my understanding that the the attorney is there to speak on behalf of the school district. They're there to give counsel to the school district.
Is it normal for an IEP student with behavioral issues to be suggested to unenroll from school?
I wish that was unusual. It's horrific, but no, it's not okay.
Let recordings of instruction that is provided to everyone considered as tier 2 instruction.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a resounding no.
Laura wants to know how she can work for you.
So nobody wants to work for me. Believe me, there's a couple people that do, that pull their hair out. But we train people to be special education advocates and go out there and crush it from coast to coast. We have 7.5 million children in America with an IEP, a gazillion children that are stuck on a 504. And those parents and those kids need representation. We would love to train you and support you so that you can go out on your own and be a special education advocate. Special education advocates, we need special education advocates. I can't scream that enough from the top of the tower, and you won't find better training than what we provide for you to become a special education advocate. So come on.
All right, this is going to be the last one. What is the status with the state trying to prohibit advocates from helping?
It's not a thing. It's propaganda. So advocates have been around since December 2nd, 1975, when we started special education, and they always will be around. I had an attorney tell me one time, look me in the face, and he said, the only problem with special education is advocates, and we are here to continue to be your problem. Because remember, when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody, and we are here to do one thing: navigate, negotiate successful student outcomes. And we will see you guys in the academy, and we'll see you guys in the next training.
Hit subscribe, share this with a friend, and you know what? Meet me back here every single week. We're not just talking about change, we're making it. Because when you know better, you do better. And when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody.